This is Vietnam, May 19th, 1969, and American military forces continue sustained combat on the steep ridges of Hill 937 in the A Shau Valley, where elements of the 101st Airborne Division are engaged in one of the most difficult operations of the year. The hill, rising nearly 3,000 feet above the valley floor, is covered in dense jungle and fortified by a North Vietnamese Army regiment that has constructed a deep network of bunkers, trenches and concealed fighting positions across the upper slopes. Units from the 3rd Battalion, 187th Infantry, supported by elements of the 1st Battalion, 500 6th Infantry and other attachments, are now in their 9th day of repeated assaults aimed at seizing the summit. Soldiers report that the terrain, vegetation and enemy fortifications combine to slow every movement up the mountain. Each company advancing along the slopes encounters thick bamboo, tangled vines and steep gradients that force the men to climb on hands and knees while under small arms and machine gun fire. North Vietnamese forces defending the hill are believed to belong to the 29th Regiment, a veteran formation with extensive experience in the region. Their defensive layout includes multiple tiers of bunkers, often dug deep into the hillside, with reinforced log roofs capable of withstanding artillery and airstrikes. These positions are connected by trenches that allow defenders to move between them without exposing themselves to fire. American units describe the system as one of the most developed they have encountered in the A Shau Valley. Throughout the operation, helicopter crews attempt to provide ammunition resupply, medical evacuation and observation support. Due to the steep terrain and limited landing zones, helicopters are exposed to enemy fire on approach and departure. Pilots often hover just long enough for soldiers to load casualties or unload supplies before pulling away from the hillside. The narrow flight paths and concentrated fire from concealed positions make each mission hazardous, but resupply remains essential for sustaining the assaults. Heavy rainfall in the region further complicates the advance. Slippery slopes limit foot movement, while cloud cover periodically restricts helicopter operations and air support. Artillery units positioned to the rear fire continuously at known or suspected bunker positions, attempting to weaken the defensive structure. Airstrikes using bombs and rockets have also been directed against the upper ridgeline. But reports from the field indicate that many enemy bunkers remain intact despite repeated bombardment. Casualties among the assaulting units continue to mount. Medics treat wounded soldiers under fire, stabilizing injuries before evacuation down the slope to designated pickup zones. Improvised ladders, ropes and cleared paths are used to move casualties, and progress is slow due to the angle of the hillside. Despite these challenges, units maintain steady pressure on the enemy positions, rotating companies between assault and security roles to manage fatigue. Enemy resistance remains strong. North Vietnamese fighters engage from camouflage positions, firing short bursts before repositioning along the trench network. They have launched several counterattacks to disrupt American advances, taking advantage of the jungle cover to move rapidly between positions. These attacks are repelled, but they reinforce the difficulty of gaining control of the hill. Commanders on the ground coordinate their efforts to attack from multiple directions, aiming to overwhelm the defensive system. Supporting elements work to identify weak points along the ridge and adjust assault routes to minimize exposure to machine gun positions that dominate the approaches. Despite the slow progress, American forces have gained ground on several flanks and continue to close on the summit. Military leadership emphasizes the strategic importance of Hill 937. Its height allows observation over key sections of the A Shau Valley, a major infiltration route used by North Vietnamese forces moving supplies and reinforcements from Laos. Securing the hill will disrupt enemy movement throughout the valley and deny them one of their most heavily fortified strongpoints in the region. Reports indicate that additional combat elements are moving into position to reinforce the assault. Artillery, air support and helicopter operations will continue as weather permits. American forces remain committed to capturing the hill despite the difficult conditions and entrenched enemy presence. The operation is ongoing and further updates will be provided as the 101st Airborne Division continues its advance toward the summit of Hill 937. Today, May 20th, 1969, we can report to you that American forces have secured the summit of Hill 937 in the Ai Shao Valley, ending 10 days of sustained combat against well-entrenched North Vietnamese Army units. Soldiers of the 3rd Battalion, 187th Infantry, supported by elements of the 1st Battalion, 506th Infantry and the 2nd Battalion, 501st Infantry, reached the top shortly after midday. Soldiers report the summit contained a network of destroyed bunkers, abandoned fighting positions, and evidence of significant enemy withdrawal during the final hours of the operation. The assault on the hill began on May 10th, with American units advancing through dense jungle, steep slopes, and multiple tiers of fortified position held by the North Vietnamese 29th Regiment. Each day of the battle saw limited gains as companies moved uphill under small arms, machine gun, and mortar fire from concealed positions. Heavy rain, cloud cover and thick vegetation often restricted visibility and delayed helicopter support throughout the operation. According to preliminary reports, American losses during the fighting include 72 killed and more than 370 wounded across all participating units. Casualties occurred primarily during close engagements on the upper slopes, where enemy bunkers and interlocking fields of fire slowed each advance. Medical evacuation was hindered by terrain, requiring repeated efforts to cut landing zones into the hillside. Enemy casualties are difficult to confirm, but American units estimate several hundred North Vietnamese soldiers killed or wounded during the multi-day engagement. With the summit now secured, American forces are conducting further sweeps of the ridge and destroying remaining bunker systems to prevent reoccupation. Commanders state that control of Hill 937 will disrupt North Vietnamese activity in the Ai Shao Valley and limit their ability to move men and supplies along infiltration routes connecting Laos to northern South Vietnam. The operation continues as supporting units consolidate positions and prepare for further activity in the region. Additional information will be released as assessments of the area are completed and final casualty figures are confirmed. Reporting to you from South Vietnam, we thank you for joining us tonight.